the
Standing on the
Carnaval
truck with a red shirt.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know his name, but he was a Mission native, and as I said, drove the Mexican buses. The one thing I knew that he did. If we had Martha Sanchez here, Martha could tell you.
Hey, somebody over here.
I interviewed you in 1985.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if you remember me. I was very young. I was a young writer here in the mission.
Okay.
You can use the microphone.
And I wrote about murals. I was one of the first journalists in San Francisco to write about murals. I interviewed you. We had an interview at the donut shop in front of the mural.
Oh yes, I had a lot of donuts there.
Yes, yes, yes. And later on, I wrote about it and tried to figure out all the characters in the mural. The guy you're talking about is, his last name is Flores. I'm not sure if his first name is Rene or Juan, but he played tennis in Dolores Park where I met him.
Oh,
and
good.
he drove a minibus. He didn't drive
He
the
was a
Mexican
regular.
bus.
He was a regular bus driver.
Yes, he drove the minibus. He wasn't the Mexican guy. The Mexican bus was run by Lalo.
A different guy.
Oh. There's
All right,
the
we got
history, yeah.
Cool. There's a lot of people knew who each of the players were. The conga player, they could tell me his name, and the main dancer.
I'm gonna get on right up close to you. Still. Hi. So I know you went to CCAC, right?
Pardon me?
Was it CCAC? Did you go to CCAC? You did,
Yeah,
didn't you?
yeah,
that's what I
CCC,
thought.
yeah, was Oakland homeboy.
That's what I thought, because Robert Bechtel was your teacher.
He was
right?
over at San Francisco State, and then I did
Oh,
a
okay.
master's in San Francisco.
Okay.
Talking about my thing.
Because I was gonna say, all the techniques that you use for painting, was that something that you learned in college or like before then? Or?
Well, you know what? I had just known that sign painters use that material to be outdoors against the elements all the time and stuff. But if that material is painted on surfaces, doesn't fluctuate like if it's on metal or something, it can last a long time without flaking and falling off. But it was the medium of wood substrate that created the flaking, because it didn't expand and retract with the elements with hot and cold. But acrylics now maintain that, and they're even better. I used a smaller selection of material that was really highly UV strong, so that they really don't fade as easily.
Daniel,
Yes.
I think she was asking also about how your schooling, like Bechtel, McLean, whatever, how that influenced your painting techniques.
Good
Is
take.
that-
Yes, well, I focused on the photorealist painters, as you mentioned, Robert Bechtel and Dick McLean, which were the powerhouses of, as I said, at the time was known as superrealism, but also as hyperrealism or photorealism. That magic of painting is really, I was drawn to that a lot. I mean, there was a guy named Chuck Close that did huge portraits, huge. And you could see the little stubble on his chin, his brush marks. It was like, I always found that kind of fun to realize that you can trick the eye into thinking things were really more realistic than you thought. So if you can expand that concept on the buildings, then you can imagine how much you can draw the viewer into what you're trying to do. And fool them as sometimes, like I tried to do the multi-building thing, and I found that later some people were kind of tricked. The center section was a three-dimensional part of the building. So that was kind of adding the fun to being a muralist in concept with the reality of what those buildings look like and how brightly colored they were painted, and I thought it would add to the mural some kind of richness.
One more. I have so many questions for you always.
So at the time, I feel like you were, at least for SF, one of the only people painting in that style.
Mm.
Did you have anybody come at you foul? Like, were they against that? Because that was something new. I imagine people would love it, but there's always somebody who.
There never really was. I started doing that kind of realism, several years before that, in Oakland called Oakland's Portrait, where I had these large 9-foot tall figures to really be exceptionally realistic. But there was even my favorite part, believe it or not, was a parking meter that was like about 12 feet high, and it was just kind of fun painting a parking meter that size. So the realism of that was kind of really fun to see at that scale. And then once you throw in a dimensional, compositional addition to it, then it expands in what it is. So making buildings different than were there, and then making figures that are 24 feet across was very attractive to make that kind of painting that big. So people could really have a good time with it. And there's photorealism painting, there's not that many of us out there, but there's a few now. Their realism was way, I have to call it something else. Not photorealism, but hyper-realism, which just as being really rich paintings like the tiger that I've seen that these guys have done back here. Hungry Ghost Productions on one. You've got a beautiful, huge, very realistic tiger and a bird, a heron, I think, which I always find enjoyable to see. So I won't take away your explosion, your concepts.
So I have no idea about murals. I just wonder, how do you keep track of which color goes where when you're right in front of that? Like, do you always step back and look at it from further away?
We're too far to step back, but that's the kind of fun painting, because you're looking at a little image of, say, a portrait, but you know that face has kind of cool, rich purple or blue on the side of the face. Well, you just use rich blue and purple. You just put it right onto the. So all the color can now be amplified, and then it really makes it pop. You really want your paintings to pop. And it's not that hard to get lost from small to big. You get into it real easy, because then you're painting a large portrait, so then you have to go back to your old schooling, knowing about portraits and blending, and it's just much bigger and more fun.
Just one question, and then, did you ever feel typecast painting realism, kind of being more kind of seen as a guy that does realism and restricting you from exploring other things?
Yeah, I don't know if I ever heard that term being typecast, but I mean, if people saw me as the guy who does this big realism in that sense of the word, but I try to make the images relate to areas in which they are executed, and but with a little more composition and design elements to draw your eyes in certain directions, have your focal point land somewhere else, and making larger figures stand out as in the forefront to lead you to the center. So, but I like to do it realistically. Every source or every image that is painted has a realism to it, because that's kind of like, that's just how I've always painted. But the freedom that I see in murals today and their expansiveness, how realism really kind of floats out in many different directions, and then words are now adapted into it. It just makes murals, in a whole new world, much more interesting. But I'll keep painting the way I do, because that's just how I paint.
And we have one last question for you.
The old pictures that you were showing, I don't know if because they are old, the colors of the mural, they look more dull, and I don't know if just because of the photography, or because the new version looks way more brighter, and how is that material? You find that the paint now is better, more brighter?
Well, I like the whole idea that it can be brighter.
Right.
I mean, because when you think about it, the murals compete in a world of color. I mean, huge amounts of sky and colors in the streets and billboards. So we're in competition with other colors. So the whole concept that your murals now can be brighter and more, I wouldn't use the word density, but just brighter. I like that a lot. In fact, the mural that you saw now, the Carnaval mural completed in 84, or started in 84. 30 years later, I purposefully added all the colors brighter than what it used to be. Purple that's more deeper. and lips that are more red, because now there's certain reds now that don't fade, so you
Right.
only use that particular red. So the colors of that mural are, as you notice, they are much brighter. The blues, pinks.
So the palette before was more limiting.
Well, I wouldn't say limited, but it didn't have that brilliance to it.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
there's different reds, there's pinks, there's purples that can really are expansive, and then other ones are good, kind of dulled down a little.
Right.
So murals today, and the spraying is a whole other issue. I don't know the pigments in that, how bright spray paints can be, but the colors that you guys have created are pretty bright. I like that. All right, thank you all. That's it for.
Thank you.
Hyperrealism.